welcome back to Raw Health Radio, everyone. I'm sitting here next to Cam. How are you going today, Cam?
Good today. How are you, Dave?
Really good. We've got a twofer.
Woo, I'm
excited.
excited.
We've got Josh and Jeannie Rubin of East West Healing on the line. How are you guys going today?
Doing great.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on our show. We're really excited about this one. We're going to be talking about all kinds of cool things. The thyroid, the insulin and blood sugar levels of the body and how they affect your weight loss. Puffers, something that Cam loves to talk about. It's your favourite subject, isn't it?
I do. I talk about it a fair bit.
So let's get stuck into the bios. Josh Rubin. He's been a practitioner in the industry for more than 10 years, works with clients to improve nutrition, lifestyle, and he's rehabilitated many different health issues. He follows the work of Paul Chek, Charles Poliquin, Guy Boyer, Ray Peat, among others. He's currently studying his diploma of osteopathy, and he's worked with clients from Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Denmark, pretty much everywhere, I think. All over the place.
Very solid.
His athletes that he's worked with include J.P. Walker, Rune Glifberg, Tony Hawk, I believe he's a skateboarder. I've heard of him before. Danny Way, and Ryan Smith. He's a Czech practitioner level 4, a holistic lifestyle coach level 3. Josh, welcome to our show.
Wow,
Are you finished?
Yeah, Jesus.
No, I'm not. We've got Jeannie here as well. Jeannie's journey began 15 years ago when she was inspired to take up the health challenge by her own issues that she was facing. She's worked and trained extensively with various back pains, spinal pathologies, neurological disorders, hormonal imbalances, and nutritional issues with clients. She is a Czech practitioner level 2 and holistic lifestyle coach level 2. Jeannie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so I thought we'd start. I've been doing a little bit of your work with the Metabolic Blueprint. Can you just give us a bit of a rundown and maybe the listeners an insight into what that goes into and what we're looking at in that?
Well, it's kind of the first program we created, and I think we kind of did it backwards, but you sometimes you kind of learn as you grow, and we created it because when we work with clients one-on-one, our goal is to educate and support them, but really help them and teach them a philosophy. It's not to lecture to them for whatever, 8 hours.
Yeah.
And along the way, a lot of people were really interested in the information, so we created this program with that thought process. The more people were educated and understood their body, the better they would be able to tune into it and meet those needs. So through that, we created the Metabolic Blueprint, which is a 8-lesson, 5-bonus lesson, online program, go at your own pace online program that really delves into the science, the anatomy, the physiology of the GI, immune, hormone detox systems, as well as the science behind body temperature and pulse, the science behind different macronutrients, etc. So it's science. It's a really very
It's going into more function. It's function-based, and it also touches on some of the myths and confusion that we see within the industry and with what people are struggling with. So we really wanted to kind of touch on those different things and create some comparisons while taking, most people have their focus on food. When we try to heal, it's always about food. Yeah. So we began to understand food in a very different way in respect to how it affects our physiology. So our goal was really putting that together and bringing the whole idea around food and how we're nourishing our bodies and what that really means to us today.
And the other thing was, it's like from teaching all over the world and for us working with clients all over the world, working with lay people as well as practitioners, what we're finding is everyone was searching for the next best certification and applying this stuff with their clients, and they were so frustrated because their clients weren't following them, the recommendations, and it really was because the practitioner really didn't understand the why behind what they were recommending. They didn't understand the science. Because if they did, they probably wouldn't be recommending it.
Yeah.
So for us, it was really important because we believe that information is very powerful, but of course, applied information is even more powerful. And we felt like people were just, taking information, applying it without truly understanding it. And it was, we saw with the people we worked with. Everyone was segmentalizing the body.
We did it ourselves.
Yeah. I'm not saying we didn't do it. I mean, we learned from our own, issues, but it was like just getting people to realize that you can't study dysfunction. You can't study GI problems. You can't study hormone problems. I mean, you can, but you're entering that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
For us, it was really getting back to normal anatomy, normal physiology, because you can't argue that. And if you understand that, when someone has an issue, you can kind of deduct and peel the layers back as to what's going on. And the bottom line is, this program is all about teaching people how to use food as their supplement, along with our cookbook, along with our other program, Fight Fatigue with Food. It's educating people so they can really understand how to use food as supplement. And, we used to be into all the labs and all the supplements, years ago, but we did less nutrition with people. And people got better, but not everyone did. And the less labs we do, we don't do any labs anymore, and the less supplements we do, which is really hardly any, and we use food based on our philosophy, we're getting the best success ever.
I love it. You guys said a key word there a couple of times, teaching and educating. I love the idea, and I think the fitness industry needs more people like you two who, rather than just say to your clients, well, this is the way that you should do it, and this is what it looks like, say, this is how it should feel, and if this happens, then this is the adjustment that you should make. And you give your clients something that they can take with them for the rest of their lives, whether they're, a 30-year-old athlete or they can use when they turn 60 and they're not as active. And I think that's so valuable and something that's really missing in the fitness industry at the moment. Do you see that as well, Cam?
Yeah, definitely. And, like I said, going through Josh's stuff, there's a lot of detail, and I even got a greater understanding of like the GI system and the nervous system that's going down there. So it's really going into the systems and how they actually work. And looking at all that stuff, is there any of those systems that you think are more important or that run any of the other ones?
Well, before I let you go any further, I'm going to correct you.
Please do.
Me or Cam?
Because this is not Josh's stuff. This is Josh and Jeannie's stuff.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
How dare you?
The question. What was the question?
It was,
is there any one system that runs the body, or are they all equally important?
Or do you find that...
for us, it's cell energy metabolism.
Yeah.
And not to ignore the other systems, because someone might have GI problems or hormonal problems, but they all go together. But the bottom line is, and this is proven by many people, like, of course, Ray Peat and Gilbert Ling, and if you look at any physiology book, you can't really argue functional physiology and anatomy. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Your cells are in all your tissues, and all your cells are driven by sugar, minerals, and thyroid hormone, which drive your system, and they literally are the conductors of every system in the body. And that's why when people have GI problems or hormone problems, you don't ignore them, but you got to peel the layers back.
Yeah.
It's like we used to say, if someone has low progesterone levels or low testosterone levels, let's say, you don't just give them testosterone. You peel the layers back and work backwards and say, what's the precursor, what's the precursor, what's the precursor? Everyone says it's pregnenolone, but for us, we believe it's nutrition lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you keep, peeling the layers back. So if you look at it, cells run and direct every system in the body. It was even shown by Hans Selye. It's under times of stress, which is basically, we could say not using oxygen and glucose sufficiently at the cell level, you produce lactic acid, which is a inflammatory marker, so you can have a downregulation of gastric juices, you're going to have decreased peristalsis, decreased pancreatic enzymes, etc. So you're going to have a gut issue. But if you upregulate energy metabolism, which is your cells, then you decrease that inflammatory response, you let the body auto-regulate, you're producing energy, so now you're going to produce all the digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and you're going to break down your food. So for us, it's cell energy metabolism.
100%.
It's pretty interesting to see how cell energy metabolism can affect everything. And you touched on stress, so do you want to maybe have a quick little chat and tell us about how stress can affect it and what sort of stresses are you talking about?
Well, the list is endless, and it's going to be person-specific because what affects one person one way is going to affect another person completely different. And, going back to what you were saying earlier about explaining the whys and having an understanding, when you can really even begin to connect that to the individual and what that means to them specifically based on what they're seeing their body is expressing, because that's really what we're doing is we're looking at physiology from that individual's point of view, what's their body expressing, and working from that point of view. But stress comes in all forms, and in a generalized sense, creates inhibition. It blocks energy production. It gets in the way. It downregulates thyroid hormone. I mean, you talk the science way better than I do, so you can break that down a little bit easier. I simplify things quite a bit, so.
I mean, a stress is a stress.
Yeah.
But like she said, it's like, getting to the airport 2 hours early for me helps to reduce stress.
Yes.
Because if I get there 5 minutes before a flight, I'm stressed. That's not stressful for her.
Yeah, right.
So everyone's stressors are differently, but if we can manage them, of course, we can manipulate our physiology, and that's what we like to teach people with food. The more we can teach you to use the right foods that are digestible in the right frequencies and the right ratios to meet your needs, you can actually control your physiology and use that as one tool to control your stressors. But the bottom line is the body reacts the same way to every single stress.
Yeah.
You could punch me in the face, kick me in the knee, shove unsaturated fats down my throat, yell at me, whatever you want to do, my body's going to react exactly the same way. And it all starts with energy production.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks to start with a hormone cascade. Well, something has to turn that on. And what turns that on is, do you have enough energy to fight stress? And when we talk about cell energy metabolism, you can call it oxidative metabolism, you can call it cellular respiration, but to simplify it, we'll just call it metabolism, which is the summation of all biochemical reactions in the body. And your one roadblock to balancing that is stress.
Yeah.
But your biggest defense mechanism against stress in your environment is metabolism. So if we can, we could say stabilize, because this is all about balance.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, stress is normal. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be there. We don't want to get away from the idea that we're going to be, or we don't want to go into the way of thinking that we're going to be able to completely reduce our stressors. Right. Again, it's creating an environment based off of who you are, where you come from, how your body is in response to your environment, and creating a healthy, something that's more supportive to your personal needs.
Well, it goes back to the work of Hans Seeley when he talked about the general adaptation syndrome. I can never remember all three phases, exactly the name. It's like the alarm phase and the whatever phase, adaptation, and the exhaustion phase. I personally believe, that our society has manipulated that syndrome into stage 1, 2, 3 adrenal fatigue, which is literally chronic blood sugar dysregulation. That's a whole other subject in itself. But so we have, like Jeannie says, we have stressors. Our body is a machine. It's designed to adapt to these stressors. You bounce out of homeostasis into a pathophysiological state, but you should be able to do things in your life, whatever it is, manage your stressors, eat the right foods, and handle your stressors to bounce back to homeostasis again. The problem is most people aren't bouncing back. They bounce from the pathophysiological to the pathomorphological to symptoms, disease, and death. So they're always progressing and living in this survival mode. And that survival mode is, I'm not taking in enough energy to meet my metabolic needs, or the demands that I'm placing on my body, physical, mental, emotional, nutritional, are exceeding the energy coming in, which is a stress. So the bottom line is, no matter what you look at or what fancy phrase you analyze based off what we just said, it comes down to cell energy production. Are you eating the right foods in the right balance so your liver stores glycogen, so you can convert that glycogen into usable sugar, so your cells can use it to produce energy, but it's more important so you can convert it, so you can use it to convert inactive thyroid hormone to active thyroid hormone, to use that for energy. And the problem is, people aren't taking in enough of the right foods and the right frequencies and the right ratios and calories to meet their needs, to regulate blood sugar and optimize energy. And that in itself is a stress. I don't care if you eat organic, if you eat 3 meals a day and you feel good, if you're not meeting your needs, it's a stress.
It's very interesting, and man, there's some great little tips in there already and information, and a whole bunch of questions were going through my mind as you're talking, but the one that I think I want to know, and maybe some of the listeners out there as well, is how do you get this optimal metabolic rate within the cell? Like you touched on, foods can do that, and then because obviously nowadays everybody's stressed, so if we can get that cell functioning properly, it can address that stress as well. So what sort of things can we do to get that working optimally? Like you touched on, glucose levels in the liver, is that part of it as well?
Yeah.
big part of it.
Yeah.
But I think that comes down to more of the blood sugar regulation frequency. But, you know, the first step for most people is to take an assessment. You know, what are you identifying that as a stressor? What are you doing right now? You know what I mean? And again, we have specific tools like body temperature and pulse that we use to understand that better and what the body is expressing. Because, you know, going back to stress, you know, most people are living in a very, very high state, and the body is an adaptive system, and that's what it does. It adapts to what we know. That becomes our norm. And we have this idea of stress as being agitation or what, you know, there's so many different, irritability. It could look like many different things to many different people. But again, it becoming the norm, we come out of relationship with what stress feels like in our body.
Yeah.
You know, so it allows us to come back into relationship with that. And then through identifying that, if somebody is in a very hypo state, you know, more often not bouncing back into homeostasis, the body from an energy production point of view also shifts. It goes away from primary glucose oxidation into lactic acid production, and that becomes its normal cycle. Okay, which is an adaptive cycle. It's a normal thing, but when it becomes
the norm,
it becomes chronic and excessive, then it becomes the norm, and the body becomes very reactive. It can no longer store glycogen in the liver. It does not have that ability. So when we're going for long periods of time of not eating, the body automatically goes into inflammation or a stress response because it cannot store the energy as it would if it wasn't in that
state. Yeah, it hasn't got the glucose. So how do we get on to being able to get the cell using glucose rather than lactic acid? Is it like just making sure we're eating every couple hours, or making sure that we've got enough carbohydrates in the diet, or?
Well, there's a lot of factors. Of course, we're talking nutrition, so I think everyone listening needs to realize they need to manage other parts of their life because there's many pieces to the healing puzzle, but we're talking nutrition. So, you know, first off, you know, there's many things in the body, whether it happens from something exogenously or from endogenous production or the inability to get rid of these substances. There's certain things in the body that can increase the body's wasting of glucose, like increased lactic acid production. And that's why we believe the excess intake of fermented foods or even ground, you know, meats, the excess intake of these things, because they're high in lactic acid, it's actually a metabolic burden for the liver because the liver tries to take the lactic acid using stored glycogen to convert it into glucose. The problem is most people aren't storing enough glycogen, so it becomes a huge metabolic burden. So at the same time, there's other things like excess estrogen or the inability to detoxify estrogen from a lot of the times not regulating blood sugar.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people think estrogen dominance is high estrogen. In all my years of working with people, I would say I've come across maybe less than a handful of people that are truly excess estrogen. Most women and men, it's the inability to detoxify estrogen and or low progesterone levels. But that doesn't mean take progesterone. If we regulate our blood sugar and energy production, we can slowly increase that, but we can use the right types of non-inflammatory proteins like broth, gelatin, whitefish, shellfish, dairy, eggs in the right amounts to help our body detoxify estrogen because the liver needs non-inflammatory proteins to eradicate estrogen. So that's first off because there's things that can waste glucose. But I think to simplify it as best as I can, most people because of our society and these diets nowadays, everyone wants to lose weight. So they're doing paleo, high protein, high fat, they're fast oxidizer, they're a protein type.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that stuff's wrong. All I can say is it never worked for me. And based on my experience, for me, it didn't work.
Yeah.
The problem with that is we're humans and we need all three macronutrients. Even though we can convert proteins and fats into sugars, it's not efficient. We use waste resources and we don't produce enough energy. So we need to make sure that, number one, which would take a lot of time, but we need to make sure we're getting the right foods that are digestible by humans, carbs, proteins, and fats, into our body in the right frequency to meet our needs. Of course, this is, you know, we're working on this over a period of time, not overnight, going at a slow enough pace. Because if you're not using carbohydrates, like I mentioned, because you're doing these paleo diets or whatever diets, a lot of the enzymes in your small intestine have been down-regulated for so long. So it happens, and you see this with people all over the web, these repeat forums, personally, I think it's doing some of it's doing it. Some of it's helping him, but personally, a lot of it is doing huge disservice to his work. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just that this comes back to people not truly understanding the science and applying it. And they think his philosophy is milk, dairy. People walking around with drinking shitloads of dairy.
And ice cream for dinner.
It's doing his whole philosophy a disservice. We recommend people eating foods based on his philosophy, and not drinking milk all day. There's a million other foods you can eat besides just orange juice. The problem is all these people gain tons of weight, and their body goes into a friggin', chaotic. It just goes chaotic, and they're like, I have insomnia now, and I have this, and I can't lose weight. All these things going on because all these enzymes have been so down-regulated because they've been, number one, taking in 1,000 calories a day, 3 meals a day, and no carbs for 10 years, and then they start going 3,000 calories, 300 grams of carbs, and 8 meals a day, and their body can't handle that. That'd be like going from first grade to 12th grade in one night. You don't have the foundation to support 12th grade, right? So it's important to understand that people have to go at a pace that works for them, but really, to answer your question, how do you store glycogen? It's moving slowly, but it's food frequency. It's making sure you're taking in digestible foods in the right amount of calories and ratios to meet your needs. But frequency is really where it's at, because if you slowly get small meals throughout the day, you're slowly putting energy into the system, and the body relearns. It can utilize it. That's why I say you have to go slow, because if you log your foods initially and you're eating 3 meals a day and it's 1,000 calories, that's not optimal, but that's where you're at.
Yeah.
You might have to go to 1,200 calories for a couple weeks or even a month to get your body used to taking in that fourth meal, to get you emotionally used to shopping for the food and cooking that fourth meal.
And
so it's a process, but how do you get the body to store glycogen? It's pretty much getting carbs, proteins, and fats and making sure your food frequency meets your needs. That's a short answer.
You guys are smart. I was not expecting
to add that, going through the process, understanding the food and how it relates to the physiology, there are stepping stones. And sometimes when somebody starts out, there are very specific things you have, like Josh was talking about the ground meats and the excess lactic acid. It's dependent upon where that person is metabolically and what their starting point is and how they're going to be using certain foods. Because if somebody is set in a very deep metabolic inhibition, basically, then we're going to avoid those foods for right now.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be serving the healing process, or we're going to make recommendations on how they can do that better. That's not going to be so offensive to their system.
Right.
I really like...
Just rewind it a little bit, like when we're talking about the repeat forms and all that stuff. I'm not trying to bash anyone, because I know everyone's just trying to get healthy, and it's all good. It's just we work with so many people from all over the globe, and a lot of our clients come from that arena, and it's not that they're doing it wrong. It's just it's maybe somewhere something's going wrong. We're seeing the damage that's done, and it just frustrates us because we've studied his work since 2004. We've interviewed him. We've talked to him a lot. And if people really knew what he ate, they would be blown away. He doesn't walk around with a jug of milk and orange juice. He eats meat. So the philosophy is about eating foods that are digestible to us. It's not about just eating shellfish, orange juice, and milk and gelatin. It's a lot more than that, and it should be fun. And the problem is that way of eating, A, you're not going to get compliant, and B, it's boring.
Yeah, definitely.
We're human, so, one of our biggest things is really, yes, there's a complexity behind it, all the stuff we're talking about. But the simplicity of it is, we're just trying to get people to get back to eating food, having fun, and feeding their system, and not overthinking it.
Right? Yeah, and I like that you said that you're using the food as, and it sounds like you're almost using it as a medicine, and because I think that, like you said, so many people are out there, they look up at a diet or Ray Peak's work and they take it for what it is and run with it rather than actually figuring out where their physiology is at the first place and then adapting it to that. So I think that's one thing that hopefully the listeners heard is that, not sticking to the regimented whatever anyone's saying. It's all about finding out where you're at first so then you can match it with the food that you're using.
I think that's super important because, like, when we work with people, our umbrella philosophy is the same. But what we do with each person is so different. There's some people I work with that have chronic GI problems. And I'll literally work with the foods on the list, but I'll cut out all dairy. All dairy. Because I just find that a lot of people in this day and age, their body as well as the quality of the dairy sucks. They can't handle it, and I get a lot of great results with cutting it out. You can heal without dairy doing Ray Pete's approach. I don't do any dairy.
Yeah.
I don't do any dairy. I didn't grow up drinking dairy.
It's not for everybody.
I've tried a million types of dairy. It just doesn't work. You know, you can heal not drinking dairy.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have these people going, I have to drink this much dairy. I have to eat ice cream at night. I have to have, you know, marshmallows. You know, I have to drink this much orange juice and have this many carbs per day. Doing his philosophy a disservice, and you're doing human beings a disservice because we're all different.
Yeah, I agree.
The foods that I take in off my list are the foods that work for me in the right ratio and the right frequencies. And that's what we try to do with people is really show them the process of individualization and how what they need could actually change based on their menstrual cycle, based on their stressors, based on the season, based on their exercise regimen, based on travel, and how we can always meet our needs by putting in the right amount of fuel. So our process is not about cookie cutting and just saying everyone needs these foods and this many grams.
Yeah.
No. And that's why a lot of people struggle with temp impulse.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're trying to take this cookie cutter approach and it just doesn't work. You can't, the body's not cookie cutter. It just does not work, you know. So for us, that's just really one of the biggest things is really that process of individualization because
Health looks many different ways.
yeah, I mean there's certain foods within our food list that we recommend that are really metabolic for me. I know when I eat them that I'm going to get, like for me, I can do well on a lot of fruit, of course, with protein and fat. But my diet, especially in the summer, lots of fruit, I do well. She doesn't do well with that. She does better with roots and fruits. When I do roots, I feel like my temp and pulse regulate, but I don't feel as like energized. But like in the summer, I'm eating tons of fruit, way less roots, and I can handle it. It really satisfies my appetite and my metabolism. But for her, it doesn't, and that's how we're all different.
And I saw in some of your work there that you can sort of test yourself, like you were just talking about, you know what foods are metabolically right for you and get that thing going. What sort of tests or ways can we figure out what is working for our metabolism and what aren't?
Body temperature and pulse is one.
Yeah.
You know, cold hands and feet, nose, those types of things are other indicators. What else do we use?
Food logging.
Food logging, of course.
Yeah.
And you have to, if you are paying attention to how you feel, you're logging your food, you're taking your body temperatures, and throughout the day, you are painting the picture. All the questions that you need answered in respect to what you need for yourself are going to be right there for you.
I love it.
Period.
I love it. I mean, it's when we say body temperature and pulse, cold hands, cold feet, cold nose, what we're really looking at, once again, to really kind of solidify what we're talking about, you're looking at cell energy production. And we didn't create this. This is the work of Rhoda Barnes. You know, he was an MD, and he did a lot of work on the thyroid, and he basically developed this system of body temperature and pulse, more body temperature, but when your cells are using oxygen and glucose efficiently, as well as other minerals, there's other minerals as well as red light that stimulates an enzyme in your cells, which is dependent on copper as well. So there's other things, but we'll just say oxygen and glucose. Just to rewind it a little bit, remember you're storing glycogen, you're converting it because your liver is dependent on sugar to actually make thyroid hormone, which your cell use. So they're both important. You can't just have one without the other.
Yeah.
So it's important to realize when we're talking about body temperature and pulse, we're looking at, is my cell using oxygen and glucose efficiently to produce carbon dioxide, ATP, and water, which is energy, simplified? If I am, you're going to rev the system, you're going to rev the engine. I'm warm, my heart rate's normal, I'm not as stressed, I'm not anxious, I'm in homeostasis, right? That's a 97.8 to 98.6 temperature, or in your universe, that's 36.6 to 37 Celsius, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If not, your cells are producing lactic acid. To simplify it, your cells are not using oxygen or any glucose sufficiently, or T3, so they're producing lactic acid. You're not revving the engine because you're not storing glycogen, it's your power generator. You're not making thyroid hormone, which revs the engine, which is the cell, and you're not producing energy. You're going to have a temperature below 97.8 or below 36.6, as well as a low heart rate, usually in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, or even a super high heart rate, like 95, 100, 120.
Okay.
So is that done first thing in the morning?
After meals?
That's, well, the best baseline, when you talk about baseline, to see where you're at. I don't care if you think you're doing the healthiest thing in the world, cleanse, labs, supplements, whatever it may be, all the crazy things out there. When you're laying in bed in the morning, roll over, grab your thermometer, because everyone keeps a thermometer by their bed. Make sure you don't mistake the oral one for the rectal one. Grab the oral one.
You only do that once.
Yeah. Get the oral one, take your temperature. Takes about 10-15 seconds, so if you don't have the time, I don't know, then you might want to check yourself. Some people say I don't have the time to do that. And you take your pulse, take it on your wrist, take it for 15 seconds, multiply it by 4. That's your baseline. That is 100% your baseline, where your metabolism is at. Because you might take it midday and it's normal. Well, of course, if you're eating the right foods and you're regulating blood sugar, it's going to be normal.
Yeah, you're moving around, yeah.
Right, and your best indicator of what you're doing, if it's working, is that, but also is your morning temperature and pulse normalizing over time. So that's your baseline.
Over time.
Over time, not overnight.
Yeah.
Over time. Everyone's like, I didn't get 98.6 today. Well, we just started yesterday and you were 95.2. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen just because you eat sugar, It takes time to heal the system. So with body temperature and pulse, that's literally what you're looking at. You're looking at, is my cell producing energy? Am I revving the engine based off what I'm doing in life and with food? So that's a huge indicator or assessment tool. Cold hands and feet or nose, that's basically liver not storing glycogen. Body needs glycogen to survive. If not, you're going to go into a coma and die.
Yeah.
So the body goes, go ahead.
So I was going to say that could be a reflection on any changes that you make towards your own health program, like if you were to start eating a different way or change your exercise routine or, your work habits might change. We want to keep those scores of your heart rate and your temperature relatively not strict, but, if we can keep them in a normal range and there's not massive fluctuations going on, then...
Well, yeah, so what we tell people is this. We'll do an example because I think a lot of people want perfection overnight, and it doesn't happen that way. For a lot of people, it doesn't. It's a feedback mechanism to let you know that you're on the right path, right? I always use school as an example. I don't know why, I just do. It makes sense to me. You're not going to graduate all your high school and college in 2 months. It takes years.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with this. I mean, you're working against your health history and your genetics from what your parents gave you. People don't ever take that into account, and that's a huge part of it.
Yeah,
so it takes a while. I mean, you're not just trying to get thin, and you're not trying to superficially shed some fat. You're working at what's going on at the cell level. Well, guess what? Guess what you were after you were a thought, you were actually a cell. That's what you started life with, a cell, and then you multiply, and then you multiply. So you're going back a long time, so it takes time to heal the system. So let's say you wake up with, I don't know Celsius, so I'm going to use Fahrenheit. You guys can convert it using Google University.
Hands on it.
Let's say you wake up 96 temperature, right, and a 50 pulse. That's not optimal, but you have a baseline. It's telling you that how you're living your life, nutritionally and physically, is not working. You need to make some changes because you're in an inflammatory state. Doesn't matter how good you feel. You're in an inflammatory state. So the bottom line is, let's say you follow a philosophy, you eat the right foods, frequencies, and it doesn't change. You're doing this for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Nothing changes. That's actually a sign of a true thyroid issue.
Mm-hmm.
Go see someone.
Okay.
I don't mean a quote unquote. There's no such thing, but everyone calls them this. I don't mean a repeat practitioner or going online and buying thyroid medication. I mean going to see someone.
I want you to kind of touch on that for a second. Buying the thyroid hormone.
Well, so.
Okay. You don't understand. People are doing it all over the place.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to get too, isn't it? So I guess if someone thinks, my body temperature's low, let's just go get some T3.
Yeah. Well, I knew someone online that I was friends with that they had a family member die from taking it.
Wow.
Once because they were playing with it.
Huh.
You know, you don't know. And it's coming from Mexico. You have no clue what you're getting. It's probably made in a garage, you know? So I think a lot of us and people are trying to play doctor, and, you know, we can make fun of doctors all we want, but, you know, I personally don't recommend people playing with T3. I think people misinterpret Ray's work when he says T3, when he says pregnenolone. Everyone thinks supplement, and it's physiology. He's talking about physiology. He doesn't say take thyroid. Now, does he recommend a lot of people to take it? Yes. We don't personally.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So, going back to the example, that would be an example of a true thyroid issue. Let's say you wake up, same temperature and pulse. You eat, that's another good time to take it, breakfast, 20 minutes later seated. It goes up a little, 96.2. You know, your pulse is usually one of the last things that's going to regulate over time because you're regulating the efficiency of your cells and how your heart's beating, you know, and you're working on, you know, the calcification in your cells. So it's usually one of the last things that's going to regulate.
Yeah.
Temp comes up a little, you eat again, then you have lunch, it comes up a little more, let's say 96.8. You eat again, maybe 97. That's the highest it gets, right? That's fine, because it's showing you that what you're doing is actually slowly regulating cell energy production. You're moving in the right direction. And it might be like that for the next month or two or even 6 months. It takes time to heal, right? As long as you're fine-tuning, you're moving in the right direction. So that's what you want to see. If you wake up at 96 and you eat at 97, then you eat at 96, and you eat at 98, and then you eat again at 95, that's blood sugar dysregulation.
Yeah.
That means maybe something in your life, or usually it's your ratios in calories at the meal that are not in balance. The people that are eating 1,000 calories at one meal is way too much, and then 100 at the next.
Yeah.
Or eating one meal at 7 a.m., not eating till 12. Or eating a meal that's super high in carbs and super low in protein, or super high in fat and super low in protein or carb, whatever it may be. The ratios are off.
Yeah.
It's really just a sign of blood sugar dysregulation when you see the pulse and temp go up and down like that. So you're looking for that slow, steady increase in level throughout the day, and usually at night, it's going to drop. In normalcy, if we just kind of use textbook, you should wake up at like 97.8. You should peak midday because you're expending energy. We're human. And then at night, when we're resting, it actually should come back down to 97.8 so we can regenerate. That's the normal cycle. So if you see your temp and pulse start low, slightly go up a peak, and then slightly come down at night, don't freak out and start fine-tuning your foods all over the place because you're not working with the body. That's how the body works. You're resting. You're not expending energy.
Yeah.
So does that answer the question? I forget the question.
I was going to say, I forget what the question was too.
It was about thyroid hormone.
Oh, okay. he's like, we're on track here. He's the regulator.
We're doing well. So moving on from the thyroid, we've got a few notes written down here about insulin and blood sugar levels and the way that various macronutrients have an impact on the amount of blood sugar in our blood, or the sugar in our blood, I should say. Can you talk about what's the insulin-glucagon connection with wellness and how people can kind of work towards fine-tuning that?
Well, I think a lot of people are scared of carbohydrates. You know, we've done many videos on YouTube on, you know, sucrose, fructose, and glucose and how fruit's your friend. And, you know, we recommend people eating a diet that is a balance of carbs, proteins, and fats to meet their needs. We're not into high carb, low protein, high fat. We're not into that.
It's what you need individually, right?
Yeah, everything is about balance. Just like when we talk about cortisol or estrogen being bad, it's not bad. If it's in excess, it's quote-unquote bad. If it's in a deficiency, it is still bad. It's the balance between estrogen and progesterone. It's the balance between calcium and phosphorus. It's the balance between any inhibitory and excitatory hormone in the body, and that's literally one of Ray Peat's philosophies. It's about balance, right?
Perfect.
So that's what it's about when we talk about macronutrients, because if you eat a meal or a diet that's too high in the wrong types of carbohydrates, of course, you're going to have blood sugar handling problems. If you eat a diet that's too high in carbohydrates, like most people do, based on Ray Peat's philosophy, you're going to have blood sugar handling problems. Carbohydrates are good. But if you just sat down and had 300 grams of carbohydrates at one meal and 10 grams of fat, the ratios are going to, or 10 grams of protein, your ratio is going to be super imbalanced. Of course you're going to have a blood sugar handling problem. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Particularly given the state of most people's metabolism in this day and age.
Right. Same thing with protein. You can get insulin secretion with protein. Eating a diet too high in protein or eating a meal with just protein, you're going to get that insulin secretion. I mean, it's that simple. So that's why we recommend people eating a diet or a meal that has carbs, proteins, and fats in it. Because if we eat the right types of carbs that have a fructose-glucose balance, so that's the reason we recommend these tropical fruits and roots, because they have sucrose in them. Sucrose is fructose plus glucose. It's a disaccharide. Glucose stimulates insulin, right?
Yeah.
Pop-Tarts, pasta, bread, it's pure glucose. Rice, yes, our cells use glucose to produce energy. But going off how everyone thinks and Reed Ray's work, that would mean that we have to eat just foods with straight glucose. No, we don't. So when he says T3 and pregnenolone, don't run out and just buy T3 and pregnenolone.
Yeah.
We need foods with fructose and glucose because it's been shown by him and many other physiologists that fructose inhibits the insulin spike by glucose. It actually regulates your blood sugar at the same time. When our body is in that state of gluconeogenesis and we're breaking down adipose tissue and creating free fatty acids, which inhibit cellular respiration, we can't oxidize glucose. So fructose can actually bypass that inhibition, get in the cell, upregulate cell energy production, and help us heal.
That's really cool.
So you can get a lot of benefit from the fruits and the roots with fructose and glucose in them. They help to regulate blood sugar.
So it's the types of carbohydrates that make the difference.
Exactly. So it's the types of carbs that make the difference, but it's also, we're not saying just eat carbs. It's in balance with the right types of proteins, like the ones I mentioned at the beginning, because as well as fats.
Yeah.
I find most practitioners I work with eat a diet way too high in fat, way too high. When we do this based off food logs we've created, they're taking in 100, 150, 180 grams of fat per day. Way too much.
Yeah, right.
It's become trendy to do that, though.
Go ahead.
It's become trendy to do that now. Everyone's, too much carb, but how can you ever know? Well, not how can you ever know, but how can you ever say, you should eat less carbohydrates and more fat? For some people, that's going to be true, and for some people, it's not. And the only way to find out is by taking the methods that you've already spoken about and using them.
Right. With the food log, for sure.
Exactly.
Because the bottom line is, we actually can produce a lot of things that we need, and too much of anything isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
So I think taking in, saturated fat is anti-inflammatory. It doesn't mean you need 180 grams per day. It's not an efficient way of producing energy. At rest, in a homeostatic state, let's say at night in a homeostatic state, we can use fat to produce energy, but we don't need to produce a lot of energy. But we shouldn't rely on it during the day. And if you're not storing enough glycogen and you're not regulating your blood sugar, you're going to release adrenaline and cortisol. You're going to break down adipose tissue, right?
Yeah.
You're going to throw your body into that survival state. You're going to break down bone. You're going to inhibit cell energy production. You're not going to regulate your blood sugar. And you're going to be that person that can't sleep, has anxiety, has osteoporosis, is breaking down their muscle tissue and feels flabby, has dark circles under their eyes, can't lose weight, can't gain weight, whatever it may be.
And I want to point out, some of these high-protein, high-fat diets do give people results. And they feel amazing doing them. You know what I mean? But they're not considered sustainable diets. It's not how you want it. You know what I mean? For a long term, it's disaster waiting to happen. You're setting yourself up for failure in the long term.
Yeah, anytime you change your diet from one to another, you're changing the system. You're going to get results.
Yeah.
Anytime you cut out one of the most important nutrients, which is, carbohydrates, the right types, you're going to lose weight because you feel great initially because you're actually thriving off adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's why you feel good.
Is it the same thing with the vegetarians? How they're like, I feel so good on this, vegetarian diet.
It's the switch from diet. It could be any diet.
Yeah.
Well, my experience of vegetarianism is that it takes the burden off the system.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it feels really good. You're not having to break down proteins, which is a lot of work.
And they probably cut out a lot of the processed foods also.
And they cut out a lot of the processed foods. They're getting more nutrients in their system.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But the whole, paleo saying are high protein, high fat, they feel good initially because of adrenaline, because they're not regulating blood sugar. We work with these people, but over time they crash. They have depression, they can't work, they can't sleep, they're tired, they have no libido. They've literally, they're not storing glycogen. They've downregulated cell energy production.
Yes,
and that's
the body can use those things for energy, but it was not designed to use those things
over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And they crash because over some time, they can no longer actually produce the amount of cortisol they need to produce glycogen.
Yeah.
That's the stage 3 adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, exactly right.
You've used all your resources and pushed the pedal to the metal for too long.
So maybe one last question, because I read in some of your work there about diabetes and insulin and stuff, and we're talking about sugars, and people might freak out going, well, I can't have too much sugars because I'm diabetic. Is sugar really the issue with diabetics and insulin resistance, or is it something else?
Didn't Ray say if there were no unsaturated fats, there would be no diabetes?
Yeah, according to Ray Peat, he believes that it's unsaturated fats that literally causes diabetes.
Wow.
It's not sugar, and it's based off the work of P.J. Randall. He quotes P.J. Randall a lot, and I think it was from like the 1960s. He showed in P.J. Randall's work that there's, once again, peeling the layers back. If you peel the layers back and you look at cell energy production, that there's basically, they're not using oxygen at the cell level. There's glucose inhibition, and they're producing excess free fatty acids. It's the free fatty acids that are as well inhibiting cell energy production. That's basically leading to diabetes. Now, Ray took it a step further and showed that that's actually happening, once again, peeling the layers back, but that's actually happening, and it's happening because of unsaturated fats, because unsaturated fats, there's a lot to it, but they basically hyperstimulate the beta cells of the pancreas, which produce insulin. They damage the beta cells of the pancreas, and they exhaust them, which can lead to, of course, diabetes. And the question is, why are we working with people in their 20s and 30s and 40s that get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes,
Yeah.
And at the same time, unsaturated fats oxidize in the body, and they have a high affinity for water, and when you're inflamed, your cells take up water, so unsaturated fats get in the cell. Long story short, just to simplify it, you're not producing energy. So unsaturated fats are inhibiting cell energy production, hyperstimulating the cells of the pancreas, and it's inhibiting sugar from getting in the cell. That's what it's really doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why we're finding it in the blood, and people are getting diagnosed with type 1, type 2 diabetes.
Interesting.
Now, we're not going to go tell a diabetic to consume massive amounts of carbohydrates either. You have to work slowly and at a pace that's appropriate for them with what their body can work with.
But the thing is, I always say to these diabetics, is what you're doing working for you? Every single diabetic I've worked with, type 1, 2, they say no.
Yeah.
That's why they work with us. So the funny thing is, there was, at one point I was working with 3 type 1 diabetics, and I asked every single one of them, like, what works for you? Like, what do you feel really regulates your blood sugar? And one of them said to me, my doctor is helping me follow this diet, but I'm going to work with you, so I'm going to change. But I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest things that helps to regulate my blood sugar is to eat foods with sugar. That's what she said to me.
That's cool.
And this is when I was teaching, and she was falling asleep in the front of the class. That's why I kind of had to take her aside and say, what's up? So, you have to go slow with these people, really slow. And the first thing is teaching them food frequency to help regulate their blood sugar, and slowly working towards eliminating foods with unsaturated fats or lowering that, and then working on balancing the ratios within their meals. And over time, we've had good success with a lot of the type 1s decreasing the amount of insulin they need, and type 2s, of course, that's, self-explanatory. If someone's willing to take the steps to heal themselves with type 2, that's pretty easy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Very cool.
Wow. I've learned so much in the last 50 minutes. You guys are smart. I've just been sitting here just trying to take it all in. Cam's keeping up with you a lot better than I am, I think. But, yeah. I'm going to have to replay this back a couple of times. I think that's all really useful information, and I really like the philosophies that you guys are teaching there, but most importantly, just paying attention to the signals that your body sends you, measuring it, feeling it, and just trying to get that balance is huge. Like that's what we need to teach everyone, because that's something that, like I said, they can take with them for the rest of their life. And I really wish there were more people like you guys out there.
Well, the thing is, you are healing to the day you die. You know, so for us, it's a journey, and if we embrace it and think, you know, if you think you're healed, you're mistaken.
Yeah.
Just like if you think you know everything, you're mistaken. You're always learning. You're always growing. So realize that if you want to heal, it takes a lifetime. You know, and just the more you embrace that, I think the more fun the journey will be. I don't know if you mind if we do this, but a lot of what we're talking about can be confusing. But if you go to our website, which is eastwesthealing.com, you can download, actually, it's a free ebook, and it's called the Stress Reduction Manifesto. So you have to enter your name and email, and you'll be sent a free ebook, which is...
Yeah, plus you'll also get a 12-part e-course on the metabolism and a lot of things that we've talked about here.
So it's good because it's obviously free. It's a great ebook. It introduces our philosophy, talks about stress. But then the 12-part series is kind of like a little e-course on understanding your metabolism and how you can use basic tools to heal your health.
That's awesome. And I've got your metabolic blueprint cookbook, and I love it.
I've got that up in front of me right now, actually, and it basically looks like a kind of a more simple version of what you guys have been talking about today. It says here, teach you the important facts on the
starting point.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
I'm glad you guys have got a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Are you working with clients as well, and how is it for people to get in contact with you if they want to?
We work with clients all over the world. You know, we use Skype or phone. We have clients. I mean, Jeannie has a client in Mumbai right now.
Wow.
We have a lot of clients all over Canada, UK. You know,
Just eastwesthealing.com.
Just eastwesthealing.com.
There's a column on the right-hand side that
to sign up for something like it's a blue box and it says, I don't even know what it says.
We just changed it, that's why.
It says, are you ready to heal your body?
Yeah. If you fill that out, you can set up a free consultation. You know, and we'll get back to you to set it up.
Well, I really appreciate both your time. This has been a really cool interview. I've really enjoyed it, and love the knowledge and the information that both of you guys are putting out there. I really appreciate you for that.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate you inviting us on, for sure.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I can't wait to open Pandora's box a little bit deeper, because you guys have definitely given us a look in.
All right, guys. We'll chat to you soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
You too.